She had not touched the piano in almost 2 years. That morning, she woke up the same way she always did. Phone buzzing on the nightstand. The smell of something already burning in the kitchen because she had forgotten to clean the toaster again. Ordinary. Completely. Totally ordinary. She made her coffee, stood by the window for a few minutes, watching the street outside, and had absolutely no reason to expect that this day would be any different from the one before it. The piano sat in the corner of the living room the way old furniture sometimes does. Not really seen anymore, just there. It had become a kind of background thing, like the crack in the ceiling she kept meaning to fix, or the stack of books she always said she would read. After a while, you stop noticing the things you have been avoiding. They just blend into the room. She had moved it there almost 3 years ago, when things were different. Back then, playing had been something she looked forward to, a way to end the day, to quiet her mind, to sit with herself without needing anything from anyone. She was not a performer. She had never played on a stage or in front of anyone important. It was just hers, something small and private that belonged to her alone. Then life shifted the way it sometimes does, quietly and without warning, and she stopped. She did not make a decision to stop. That is the strange thing about grief, and she would not have even called it grief at the time. Not then. She just found other things to do in the evenings. She rearranged her routine. She kept busy in the particular way that people keep busy when they do not want to sit still with something that hurts. And 1 week became 2 weeks, and 2 weeks became a month. And somewhere along the way the piano stopped being a part of her life without anyone deciding that it should. The morning she finally sat down at it again. She had not planned to. She was looking for something. A charger, she thinks. Or maybe it was her keys. She was already running a little late and moving fast through the apartment the way you do when your brain is half. On the next task and half, trying to remember where you left the thing you need. She passed the piano. She stopped. She does not know exactly why. Maybe it was the light that morning. There is something about early light coming through old curtains that makes everything look softer, more forgiving. Like the room is showing you a version of itself from a long time ago. The piano looked different in that light. Or maybe she just finally let herself look at it. She sat down on the bench not to play, she told herself. Just to sit for a second, just to stop moving for a moment. The keys were dusty. Not terribly, but enough that she could see it. A thin layer of time settled across the white and black. She ran one finger along the edge of the keys without pressing anything, just feeling the familiar smooth coolness of them. And something in her chest did something she was not expecting. It was not sadness exactly. It was more like recognition, like running into someone you used to know very well and realizing, in the first second of seeing them, how much time has passed. She pressed one key, just one. A single low note that moved through the quiet apartment and then disappeared. And then she pressed another, and then, before she had made any conscious choice about it, both her hands were on the keys, and she was playing something a piece she had learned years ago, something slow and simple that her fingers still remembered even though she had not thought about it in a long time. She had forgotten that the body holds music the way it holds other things, the way you can still ride a bicycle after 10 years, or still remember the route to a house you lived in as a child even though you have not been there since. Her hands moved through the melody on their own, ahead of her thoughts, playing the notes before she had time to question whether she still knew them. For a moment, it was just the music, just the sound filling the small room, a little uneven in places, a little hesitant, but recognizable, real. And then, without any warning at all, she felt the tears. Not a slow welling, not a quiet sting behind the eyes. It was faster than that, and more surprising, the kind of crying that arrives before you understand why. That comes from somewhere deeper than thought. Her hands kept moving on the keys, even as her vision blurred, even as she felt the tightness move up from her chest into her throat. She had not planned for any of this. She had been looking for her keys. She had somewhere to be. She had a full day ahead of her, a list of things to get done, a version of herself, already dressed and ready to walk out the door and go about her ordinary Tuesday. And here she was, sitting at a dusty piano in her living room, crying before 9 in the morning, not entirely sure why, but also, and this part surprised her most, not trying to stop. What the music knew that she did not stop. Her hands stayed on the keys as if they understood something her mind had not yet caught up to. The notes came uneven at first, broken by breaths she could not quite steady, but they continued. Anyway, soft, imperfect, real, the kind of playing that was never meant to be heard by anyone else. The tears did not ask for permission. They moved freely now, no longer surprising, just present. And somewhere between one chord and the next, she stopped trying to understand them. There is a moment, sometimes, when resisting something becomes harder than allowing it. She reached that moment without noticing when it happened. So she'll let the music take over. It changed, slowly. What began as a familiar piece drifted into something else. Pauses where there should not have been pauses. Notes held longer than they were written. Small hesitations that felt like questions. Her hands were not just remembering anymore. They were searching. And then, quietly, the memory found her. It was not dramatic at first, not a sharp flash or a sudden realization. It came the way certain memories do, gently, almost kindly, as if it had been waiting for the right time to return. A room, a voice, laughter that used to fill spaces the way the piano now did. She saw it not as a full picture, but in pieces. The way he used to sit nearby while she played, not saying much, just listening. The way he would sometimes hum along, always slightly off-key, and then laugh when she noticed. The way he once told her, half joking and half serious, "You play like you're talking to something you can't see." She had laughed at the time. She understood it now. Her fingers slowed as the weight of it settled in, not suddenly, but completely. This was what she had been avoiding. Not the piano. Not the music. Him, or maybe more accurately, the version of her life that still had him in it. She had not realized how carefully she had built her days around not thinking about that absence. How she had filled her time with noise, wheat, movement, with small distractions that made it easier to keep going without ever having to stop and feel the full shape of what was missing. The piano had been part of that silence, not because it caused the pain, but because it carried too much of him with it. And now, sitting there with tears still falling and music still moving through her hands, she understood something simple and unavoidable. She had not stopped playing because she forgot. She had stopped because she remembered too well. The realization did not break her the way she might have expected. It did not shatter anything open or make the grief sharper. If anything, it did the opposite. It softened it, because now it had somewhere to go. Her playing grew quieter, slower, as if the music itself was adjusting to this new honesty. Each note felt less like something she was forcing out and more like something she was finally allowing to exist. She was not performing. She was not fixing anything. She was not even trying to feel better. She was just letting it be there. The last few notes came gently, almost reluctantly, like they knew they were reaching an ending. Her fingers rested on the keys for a second longer than necessary, holding the silence just before it arrived. And then, finally, she stopped. The room returned to itself. No music, no movement, just the quiet hum of the ordinary world she had woken up in that morning. Unchanged on the outside, but not quite the same anymore. She sat there for a while, not wiping her face right away, not rushing to stand up or check the time or remember where she had been going. There was no urgency now. The feeling in her chest was still there, but it had shifted. It was not as tight, not as overwhelming. It felt lighter, not gone, not resolved, just less hidden, as if something that had been locked away had finally been given a little space to breathe. She looked down at the keys again, noticing the faint lines her fingers had traced through the dust. A small, quiet evidence that something had happened here. Something real. She let out a slow breath she did not realize she had been holding for years. And then, carefully, she closed the lid of the piano. Not as a goodbye, not this time. More like a pause. She rested her hand on the top for a moment, her expression softer now, steadier. There was still sadness there, but it was no longer something she needed to run from. If anything, there was a trace of gratitude mixed in with it, for the music, for the memory, for the strange, unexpected way the two had found her when she least expected it. She stood up, finally remembering the rest of her day, waiting somewhere beyond this room. Her phone was still on the table. Her coffee had gone cold. Her keys, wherever she had left them, still needed to be found. The world had not stopped, but something inside her had shifted just enough to make it feel different. As she walked away, she glanced back once more at the piano. This time, she saw it, not as something to avoid, not as something heavy, but as something that had held a part of her until she was ready to come back for it. She had not planned to cry today. Tomorrow would probably be ordinary again. The routines would return. The noise would fill the spaces like it always did. But today, just for a little while, she had listened, and the piano, patient as ever, had told her the truth.